The object I have chosen to discuss is the Canon 6D Mark II DSLR camera. My main reason for choosing this object is because it's an object I personally own, and at the time of purchase was cutting edge technology in photographical terms anyway. But just after 1 year of existence, it has been surpassed by even newer technology today. I will discuss this object in terms of how its form and technology changed gradually over time, resulting in its present form and attributes, the reasons for its being, and society's need and fascination with photography in general over the decades. To begin this discussion, I want to discuss the reason man needed to capture an image in the first place. Since as early as Neanderthal man, cave images have been discovered that are over 42,000 years old. Many people have speculated as why man needed to capture these images in the first place. Some of the theories are, as a way of decoration, early man painted caves with images of animals because they were of great importance to their existence. There is something very magical about capturing images, and perhaps a way of helping the hunters capture the prey. And a way of communication, early man documenting their hunts and prey. My own belief is that early man would have treated paintings on cave walls as if they were some form of magic. It was one of the earliest forms of technology that would have been even more mind-blowing than a young child today seeing a holographic image for the first time. There is no doubt that these simple cave drawings were a new form of communication and the forerunner to writing, both of which would have had a huge impact on human society and its evolution. An old lecturer of mine once said that the greatest technology that ever existed, which had the greatest influence on human society, was writing. And if we are to accept this to be true, then we must also accept that these simple paintings were the beginning of this process, a way of storing information and passing it on to future generations. Some could argue that this form of storing information is even better than today's digital media, as a lot of these images are still in existence today. The first camera ever invented was the Camera Obscura and dates back to the 5th century BC. The camera was constructed of a wooden box with a pinhole in it which would project light onto a surface. The image it projected would be upside down. Later versions would be a little more complex and consisting of lens and mirrors, which would project the image right way up. The Camera Obscura was mainly used for entertainment and drawing purposes. The first true camera invented is credited to Joseph Niepce in 1826. What separated his invention from the Camera Obscura, invented approximately 130 years earlier, was his camera actually captured an image onto paper coated with silver chloride. The drawback to Niepce's film process was the image produced required about 8 hours of exposure time, wasn't permanent, and would fade after a while. Louis Daguerre improved upon Niepce's photographic techniques in 1839 and is credited with inventing the first practical camera. His technique involved exposing an iodized plate within the camera to light. This image would be exposed to fumes of mercury and then made permanent by using a solution of common salt. A lot of these early images are still in existence today. It is interesting to note how photography was received at this time by society. Daguerre, who was originally an artist, his photos were first seen as a competition to paintings, but gradually would be embraced by some artists who would use them to help create paintings, such as capturing fleeting moments in time. An example of this is Gustave Courbet's 1869 painting, The Wave. Jean-Louis Gérôme was an early example of a painter who adopted photography rather than rejected it. We can see this clearly in some of his paintings, which are based off photographs taken by Nadar. Early photographers also used many of the artist's tricks and techniques, such as lighting and composition, to capture their images. Early photography was seen as a new form of fine art and was quickly embraced by society, which is one of the positions it still holds onto today. The next big leap in the development of the camera came about in 1878, when it was discovered by using heat-ripening gelatine emulsion within the film coating medium greatly increased its sensitivity. This led to what could be known as the Instantaneous Snapshot. With this new process, cameras no longer needed to be supported on big tripods, and smaller handheld cameras began to become very popular among the growing ranks of amateur photographers. This also coincided with the invention of the mechanical shutter release, which enabled very quick exposure times. The next big milestone in the development of the camera was the manufacturing of celluloid film, which was pioneered by George Eastman. He went on to mass produce a simple, inexpensive camera known as the Box Brownie by Kodak. This proved to be extremely popular and remained in manufacture until 1960s. The slogan for the Box Brownie was, "You press the button, we do the rest." Only costing $1 at the time, 100,000 of them were sold in the very first year of production. This gave access to the middle class and amateurs alike to start taking their own snapshots and indulge in photography for the very first time. The impact of the Box Brownie, or the Kodak camera, was immense on society. Within a few years of its introduction, snapshot photography had become a national craze. Many camera clubs began to be formed and photograph magazines started to appear on the shelves. The use of the camera to capture a personal moment, such as weddings, graduations, holidays by the seaside, started to become commonplace, much as in the way cameras are still used to the present day. Where Polaroid cameras were for the ordinary man on the street, at a more professional level, SLR cameras started to be developed. A single lens reflex camera, or SLR for short, typically uses a mirror and prism system that permits the photographer to view through the lens and see exactly what will be captured. In 1948, the Reflex was the first SLR camera to hit the market, followed by the Context S made by Zeiss in 1949. Japan also started manufacturing SLRs shortly after that and made substantial breakthrough when they launched the Asahi Pentax in 1957, which introduced a lot of new features, such as an instant returning mirror, microprism focusing screen, a film rewind crank, and a right-handed film advance lever. Many of these features you will still find on a modern SLR camera today. The next big milestone in the camera's development was the invention of the digital camera by a young engineer working for Kodak, Steve Sassoon, in 1975. The first commercial camera that actually sold under the Canon brand was the Hassan Canon, basically a complete rip-off of the Lycia camera. In 1976, Canon produced the first camera with an embedded microprocessor, the Canon AE1, which controlled most of the camera's functions. The next huge milestone in Canon camera's development was the introduction of the first digital SLR, the Eos D30, in 2000. In 2008, Canon released the first full-frame CMOS image sensor camera, the EOS 5 Mark II, which was capable of recording full HD video. It received much praise at the time and won the Camera of the Year in 2009. The Canon 6D Mark II came into existence in 2017. It was an update on the 6D Mark I with some novel new features, such as a touch-sensitive flip screen and a much more advanced dual pixel focusing system. The camera is made from hard plastic covering a magnesium shell. Inside this, all the circuit boards and sensors are contained. The shape and style of the camera is gender neutral, I would suggest, as basically its form is governed mostly by being as small as possible and yet at the same time containing all the technology inside. The colour black might suggest that it's aimed at a male market, but I believe this is more of a practical decision, as the black finish remains pristine even after years of use. This camera has positioned itself well in the modern world that needs to be continuously connected. It has built-in GPS, NFC and Bluetooth capabilities. This gives it the ability to connect to your phone, upload pictures and video, use your phone to actually control the camera itself. In today's, one could argue, narcissistic or self-obsessed society, this camera's features are a dream. With a flip screen you can record yourself while looking at yourself. It has a touch screen which enables you, with just one touch of your fingers, lock focus on your face. You are then able to walk around while recording yourself. All the time the camera's technology is taking care to keep your face in sharp focus. This camera, I would argue, is all things to all people, photographically speaking, of course. It can be used by and is used by many professional photographers, such as wedding photographers. It is in a price range of the average amateur photographer. It is used by many indie amateur filmmakers, and where it comes into its own is as a camera for the modern day YouTube vlogger.